Welcome to Wellness Rebranded.
We know there's so much conflicting health and fitness advice out there.
And you're tired of the senseless and toxic diet culture noise.
You're ready to tune into your body, feel empowered around food, and focus on your true health and well-being.
Welcome to the Wellness Rebranded podcast.
We're the healing trio of your health and wellness anti-diet dreams. I'm Tara, personal trainer.
I'm Elizabeth, registered dietitian and certified intuitive eating counselor.
And I'm Maura, licensed clinical social worker.
Together, we're pushing back on diet culture, hustle culture, and toxic positivity to help you practice genuine health-promoting self-care.
So grab your water bottle,
forget the rules,
and let's start rebranding your wellness journey.
Welcome back to another episode of Wellness Rebranded. Today, we are talking about social media and mental health. I'm here with Elizabeth and Maura. And Maura, take us into some social media and mental health.
Yeah. I think at this point, all of us kind of know how much social media has kind of taken over our lives. When we think about it, it's kind of like, how much time are we using on it?
It's actually so funny that you're choosing to talk about this topic. So you just showed up today and told us this is what we were talking about, right? We didn't know it ahead of time.
Yep.
But I have been deeply evaluating my relationship with social media recently. So I'm super intrigued to hear what you're going to say.
Yeah. Well, I'm imagining, because the fact that you're thinking about that, I think a lot of people have this awareness of I think I'm getting too sucked into this, or I maybe am using this in a way that's not helpful for me. So I'm curious about what either Tara or you, Elizabeth, have your experience with social media, and maybe Elizabeth, what's shown up for you that's kind of called your attention.
I'm maybe a bit rare in that I never had social media ever. I was not on any type of social media until I started my business 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I was perfectly fine with it. And
that is rare.
Yeah. And frankly, I didn't understand. I'm like, why can't you just text the people? I really didn't get it. And also I had no desire to blast my life on social media. And then I had to get on it when I was doing my master's program because my cohort was communicating that way. Mm-hmm. And there was things that I needed. So I got on it, and then I started marketing my business through it. And then really my primary point of using it is for my business only, but it's a big part of my business. I'm very active on social media. I don't really use it personally. I almost never post anything on my personal page. I'm super careful about never showing images of my kids, or every now and then I'll throw up a picture of my husband and I. But really, I try to be really guarded about what I do and don't show. And usually, so I'm very careful about it, but I'm very much on it for business purposes. I wish I wasn't on it as much for business purposes. And also, like anyone, once you get on, it does sometimes you go down the rabbit hole, right? And I just don't want to be.
Yeah.
I think I've told you guys before that I personally am focusing a lot on mindfulness this year, and I just want to be more present in the real world.
Yeah, and social media does kind of take us out of the present moment.
And out of the real world in a way.
Yeah, definitely.
I actually heard a thing the other day that says that couples that use their phones in front of each other for prolonged periods of time report some high level of dissatisfaction in the relationship, even though nothing's wrong. Mm-hmm. It just sends the message that whatever's happening on your phone is more interesting than whatever happened in the real world right in front of you.
I get that. It drives me crazy when people pull out their phones at the dinner table. And we try to have that rule in my house, but at a restaurant, even when you're out with other people, it's so normal for somebody to pick up their phone, and it just always kind of bugs me, but it especially bugs me when my husband does it.
Fun story, my first date with Marcus that we didn't even realize was a date because we weren't even dating yet. We went out to dinner, and afterwards he said something like, "Wow, it's crazy. You didn't even look at your phone the whole time." And I was like, well yeah, I'm with you. Why would I need my phone? And I just found that so odd, but apparently he'd dated a bunch of people that were doom scrolling during dinner.
Yeah. So I'm going to preface this by saying, of course, I've taken out my phone occasionally. I do try to be mindful about it, but I certainly have done it. But to me, it does send the message. If I'm with you and we're 4 friends going out and hanging out and you're on your phone, well, doesn't it kind of say you'd rather be with those other people than whoever's on the other end of the phone?
But it feels disrespectful to me.
I find it rude. And again, I know that I've done it. So
I was actually thinking about that, Tara, when you mentioned that study. I'm really interested in that. I want to take a look.
I'll see if I can find the link for you.
Yeah. Because like when you were saying that, there have been so many times where me and my husband are hanging out and we're like both on our phones.
Yeah.
And then I put my phone away and then I'm like resentful that he's on his phone.
Yes.
Me, as if I wasn't just on my phone.
Yeah. Yeah. Same.
Yeah. Well, like I'm not doing this too.
You can't do it, but I can for sure.
Right. Yeah. It's okay when I'm doing it.
And it's interesting too, because I think the narrative is like, oh, kids are always on there. Like teenagers are always on their phone, right?
Dude, it's like everybody.
Yes, it is. But also, I brought this mindfulness expert into my membership several months ago, and she works with elementary school kids and has brought mindfulness to them as a program. And she said the number one complaint they have is that their parents are always on it. So to your point, Tara, yes, it is everyone.
I actually see that with like my son. So he's like 2.5 now, but you know, like when he was born, I'd be like feeding him in the middle of the night, like scrolling on my phone. And then like he got a little bit more aware of the world around him and I would be like scrolling on my phone. And now he'll be like, get your phone out. Like if he wants me to leave him alone, get your phone out.
Oh my gosh.
And even now, like he's 2.5, so we'll get some cuddles before bed. And like I read books on my phone. So a lot of times I'm reading a book, which I see as like a healthy thing that I'm doing. Yeah. But because it's still on my phone, to him, it's the same.
Yeah.
So he'll be like, read your book. Like if he wants a couple more minutes of cuddles, but read your book.
That is hilarious.
You know, so it's made me aware. I'm like, oh, it's like I'm cuddling him, but also my attention's over here.
Yeah.
And so I've kind of made a point now to leave my phone off or in my pocket or out charging or whatever so that it's just like quality time with us.
Yeah.
I try hard not to bring my phone with me when I'm going for a walk, especially with other people. If I'm walking by myself, I might listen to an audiobook or a podcast, but
Yeah.
Also for like safety reasons.
yeah, but my brain always goes back to, well, I lived most of my life without a cell phone and like, I'm here. Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
same with,
And the world is safer. Like we kind of think that it isn't, but it is actually like, if we look at the numbers, the world is safer.
really?
Yeah.
I'm also surprised by this.
Yeah. Like things are safer now. Kidnappings, right? Like we freak out about kidnappings, but it's actually safer. I'm not saying like, let's go leave our kids unattended all the time, you know, like out in a public
Probably because
area.
people are like, oh no, a kid. What do I want this responsibility for? Oh, I have to take care of this all the time? No, don't put me down for that.
That's Tara on a Friday night.
I'm interested, though, Elizabeth, in hearing your experience, because I wonder if some of the things I want to talk about is like some of the harms of social media. And I'm curious if you've kind of, because of your mindset going into your social media use, if that might have kind of averted you. Or like you may have like averted some of these harms in a way. So I'd be curious to hear that. Because my social media experience, I was on MySpace way early on, like maybe senior year in high school, I was on MySpace. And not too much. Like I was mostly like outdoorsy and like did stuff because it was the 2000s. So like there were things that we did, I guess. But
Yes, we did things back
we did
then.
the things outside. But definitely like there have been points in my life where I'm on it and engaged a lot more. So I can definitely relate to some of these harms. So I'd be curious, Elizabeth, if you've had them. And Tara also, like, has your social media experience been like kind of the typical or like?
So I got on Facebook, I don't even know how many years ago, 10 or 15 years. But I will say my social media use has changed now that I'm a parent because I'm like, oh, let me join this mom group and let me find out about safe sleep. And here's one about feeding your baby properly.
Yeah.
So I use it almost as like a place to gather information, which is super scary actually, because a lot of the information out there is like people's opinions and not based on anything tangible other than their own experience, which, as we know, can be like dicey. But I find that I'm on it a lot more now. And I also don't like that.
Yeah,
I feel like compelled to like take out my phone and scroll like, okay, what am I not seeing? What am I missing? And it's like a yucky feeling.
Yeah, the second part of that, which is, again, I am on it for business. So I'm on it periodically throughout the day, but I hate it when I find myself with a spare moment. And without even really consciously recognizing it, I open up one of those apps.
Yeah.
That drives me crazy.
I do have something for you then for later.
Okay, good.
Yeah. But actually, Tara, something you mentioned made me think of something I do want to say too, which is social media has been really helpful, I think, especially for marginalized communities, because, you know, the three of us are white women and we can find like people pretty easily represented in like other types of media.
Mm-hmm.
And our voices are heard a little bit more easily, I think.
Yep.
And so I think, I don't want to demonize social media, even ones that are kind of like sometimes demonized, like TikTok. Like we do demonize that sometimes, but really there is like a lot of connectedness that can come and like advocacy that can come from social media. So there are a lot of great things. It's kind of, I think I had used the idea of like the tool itself is neutral, but it's the way we use it.
Yeah.
That can
Yes, I
sometimes
love
be
that.
harmful.
That's like a great phrase. The tool itself is neutral, but it's the way we use it.
Well, okay, I'll just be quiet because I have another. I'm like, is it neutral though? Because there is like there is a dark side
There
of like
definitely is.
misinformation and
Yeah. And the way that it's even designed is to keep us engaged in it.
Yes.
Yeah. Like it wants us to stay on there.
yeah,
Like the endless scrolling, which I know the guy who invented endless scrolling feels really bad about it now.
really.
Yeah, he does. Because it is kind of like used to keep us engaged. We can't like stop because
Yes.
the scroll is endless.
I remember like first getting on Facebook and being like, okay, I guess I'll just scroll. And then it's like, oh, I've seen this already. Like you got to the end of it. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I remember seeing what this friend wrote and this friend wrote. So like, that's it. I've seen it all. And then I would just get off of it.
Yeah.
So the endless scrolling thing is like a real danger, I feel like.
Yeah, definitely. And so some of the harms that we see with social media is, I think, Tara, you had mentioned like this kind of like FOMO, to be very millennial of me, FOMO, the fear of
Totally.
missing out. That is definitely something that shows up for a lot of people. Has that been something that you've experienced, Elizabeth?
No, but I'm not really a person prone to FOMO in general. My husband actually teases me about that because he has major FOMO. I don't know what that says about me, or for whatever reason, I don't tend to gravitate towards FOMO. So I do not experience that part of it on social media, usually, I would say.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me in knowing you a little bit. I don't know.
Agreed. That's not at all
That
shocking.
doesn't surprise me. I think because you do have kind of a sense of like mindfulness for a lot of the time. And I think a lot of gratitude and like present moment awareness that
I also
probably
think
helps.
your life is more interesting than anything that could be online.
Wow. I have so many questions. Save them for when we're not recording.
But you travel a lot and you have a busy family. Like,
I'm very
interesting.
I am very blessed.
So there's some people experience that FOMO. I think a lot of people do, especially when we start to get into the comparisons. And the comparison also leads to this like feeling of inadequacy sometimes. Mm-hmm. Because when we're posting on social media, there are times where like people are posting about like this terrible thing that happened. But a lot of the times it's like we're posting about great things that are going on in our lives.
Totally.
And
It's our highlight reel.
yeah. And even if it's like not intended to be like perfectly curated, it is naturally kind of curated.
Yeah, I do think the comparison is a huge problem. And I would say even just, again, I don't use it a ton for personal, but I use it a lot for business. And like I get in comparison trap of in the business sense.
Yeah,
based on what I
absolutely.
see in social media. I don't like that.
Yeah. That can definitely show up. And there's also like, I think kind of along those same lines is sometimes feeling like isolated. Like you're maybe not feeling like you're measuring up, and that can kind of lead to feelings of isolation. And that feeling of isolation can then actually cause us to isolate ourselves more and maybe withdraw a little bit more because we're not feeling like we're measuring up. This is kind of, I think, some of the things that happens when we're like really engrossed with it. And like we were talking about earlier, it is really designed to keep us engaged with social media and less in real life, right? Like
Right.
Yeah. And
It's addicting.
It's addicting. That's kind of the part that I don't love about social media. I typically use social media in 3 ways: for networking, for business purposes, and to keep up with like friends and family. But
Momming, it sounds like.
yeah, true. And like learning new information about momming. But because the way it's designed is like, oh, she hasn't interacted with this person in a long time. Let me show her more of this. And like you can kind of click like, oh, hide this ad or hide this thing. But it's such a game that I don't think there's any winning it.
Yeah.
The only people winning are like the advertisers on it.
Well, and also the loudest and the most extreme voices are the ones that rise to the top of the algorithm.
Yeah.
It seems like.
Yeah, I mean, those are the ones that are engaged with, right? I like to read the controversial posts. I get excited. I'm like, ooh, what is going on in the community Facebook page? Like, let me check this out. And because I'm clicking on it, and usually like I'm more of a lurker, but like, even that is engagement. And so that's going to be pushed up the top of other people's feeds. And then they're going to comment and like,
And diet culture is rampant. So toxic.
Common sense doesn't sell. It's like the normal stuff, like, hey, enjoy foods in a healthful way. Exercise if you're feeling good and moderate your stress. Doesn't sell.
Yeah.
But there's
sexy.
It's not sexy.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, before and after photos are so compelling.
so compelling.
But they're not really before and after most of the time.
Like before and during. Before and before you feel
During
good.
and during. Yeah. So, I think something that most of us are trying to do is to spend less time on social media, not necessarily get rid of it, because there are really useful things. I think the groups on social media can be like really helpful. Community groups are like really helpful. There's a couple therapist groups that I'm in that I've found to be incredibly useful for like finding resources or referrals.
Yes.
I think that those kind of things like are really, really helpful.
I find that same thing in my industry too. Like some of the personal trainer groups and things like that, like just feed you new studies that you would have never normally found on your own.
Yeah.
Right.
And it kind of changes the way that you might do things, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And also, I have made connections on social media that I never would have made elsewhere, even just with other dietitian colleagues or people in the anti-diet space or just local people, frankly.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So like, I'm not necessarily saying like, we need to just get off social media entirely. But I think that some of the things that we've been trying to do don't seem to be working. Like, I really love the feature that Apple started using on their phones a while ago, where they have like screen time, like you can designate how much screen time you want to use.
Yeah, I like that too.
I love that. However, you know what I do?
I'm actually just appalled by it every Sunday. When I
same.
So you can set limits, and so it'll pop up. So I thought, this is going to change my world. It'll send a little thing. It'll like, your screen will go white, and it's like, hey, you don't have any more time. And I hit dismiss, ignore. And I go back to it all the time.
And it's that easy to get around it. It's funny. I'm saying I didn't know it, but I used to put screen time limits on my kids' phones. But I don't know. I guess I did. For some reason, I'm thinking of it in two separate channels.
You can make it more difficult. Like I did make it more difficult where I would have to put like a separate passcode in. So that way I would have to at least think about it, which did help. And I think that that is a strategy that still is helpful for me, is like making it just a little bit more difficult. So I have to think about it for a moment because of that, like mindless, like Elizabeth, you were mentioning, just like you're just picking up your phone and like you're just scrolling all of a sudden. That kind of helps snap us out of that. Like, oh, wait, do I actually really want to like waste a bunch of time on TikTok right now?
Right.
So that can be helpful. But I found that something that was even more helpful for me, and this is something that is often recommended, is making it as difficult as possible to access it. So that for me meant taking the app off my phone. I can still access it from my phone. Like I can go to Safari because I have an iPhone, but it's not as convenient, and it's more convenient to use like a laptop. So thinking about someone who's using it for business, it might be something that's more helpful for you to like designate time that you only access it on a laptop.
Yes. And I love that idea. And this is going to sound so stupid, but for Instagram, I do make reels occasionally for my business. And you can't do that from the laptop. And if you delete the app off your phone, because I have thought about, well, just take it off on the weekends. You actually lose everything in your drafts folder. At least I'm pretty sure you do. I'm fine with an expert.
They make that so tricky.
But I think you can. So the solution that I've come up with, but I haven't executed, is actually I really just want to get a different phone. I want to get a business phone.
You should do that.
Oh,
I have that.
Interesting.
And it will be on that one. And then I'm not taking that with me when I'm trying not to work, and I won't have it on my personal phone.
Yeah.
And really that could solve a lot of things, right? Because I tend to be a workaholic.
Yeah.
Where I enjoy what I do. So I'll just pick it up and start working if there's a quiet moment. But I'm really trying to have that better boundaries.
I would highly recommend a separate phone. I have one, and it's so much nicer. So yeah, definitely highly encourage that.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't know anybody that has two phones.
Really?
So I'm looking at both of you like, what?
Oh, yeah.
Two phones?
Well, and that's partly why I haven't done it, because I'm like, who am I that I need a whole nother phone? But really, it's just for my own mental health.
Yeah.
Honestly, is why I want it.
I like having that separation.
Which is a very valid reason. Not that you even need a valid reason. If you want to have two phones, have two phones. But
my work phone.
If it makes your mental health better, like, why would we not do this?
Yeah, I know. And yet I haven't done it.
Yeah.
I just keep talking about it.
I definitely recommend it because then I notice that like I'm spending less time checking my email too. Like I'm doing a lot. I'm doing work when I'm doing work, and it's not like in my pocket or in my hand all the time.
I need that. I
Yeah.
should just drive right to the store.
Oh, you should do it.
You guys are like convincing me that I want 2 phones. See, because I like wake up and before I'm even out of bed, I'm like scrolling, like, let me check my emails, and like, okay, I better respond to this real quick. And I'm like not even out of bed yet. Like,
Right?
what?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
You need one too.
Yeah, highly recommend. So in addition to making accessing social media more difficult, I also want to talk about like kind of balancing some of those other harms that we talked about, like the feeling of isolation, the FOMO, that kind of thing, the comparison. I think, like I always say, it's noticing that that's happening. And maybe when you notice that's happening, that's like a good signal to maybe take a step back. And in addition to doing the stuff that I always normally say, I think it could be helpful to, like with the mindless kind of picking our phone up, a lot of the times we're doing that to avoid something, like it's avoiding boredom or avoiding like awkwardness, avoiding like a feeling even. I know I had a sad thing happen recently in my life and I immediately was like on my phone, like playing games I don't even play games on my phone. I was playing games on my phone. It was like kind of helping me avoid those feelings in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
So we often will just go to our phone automatically. And so sometimes it could be helpful to like practice having the awkwardness, like maybe you're in a cafe waiting for your coffee. Instead of picking up Instagram and like scrolling through, maybe just like take a look around and like see what's going on. Maybe interact with a stranger that have like an awkward interaction. Be like, hey, whoa, look at the weather out there.
Well, I was just going to say, so I'm thinking that makes perfect total sense. And I do try to do that. And yet, even when I have the intention, I still will occasionally find myself doing it. So in those scenarios, sometimes I will purposely leave my phone in the car.
Yeah.
So that I actually can't do it.
I think that's a great idea. And I think it's totally okay too to notice that you have picked up your phone and then put it away.
Yeah.
And then pick it up again and then put it away. It's okay if you do it 100 times.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I agree.
It's practice. So the more you practice it, the easier it'll get. And I think taking it away entirely, like taking that option away is also a helpful thing.
Maura, I actually did like an experiment with my classes at the community college. So I teach kids how to be personal trainers up at the community college here. And I had them note how many times they opened their phone every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I had them stick like a Post-it note on the back and just like write a tick mark every time. And I thought it would be like, oh, I opened it 30 times or whatever.
Oh, I bet it's way more than that.
So I did it with them and mine was like 100. And I was like, 100 times? Like I'm a pub. Like what could I possibly have needed my phone for 100 times that day? And mine was one of the lower ones. There was like one kid who had like 80, and then there were like several kids that were over 1,000.
Wow.
And I was like, that would take me all day to like open up my phone that many times.
Yeah.
But if you think about like what a time waster just picking up your phone and opening it is, imagine what else we could get done in our lives
right?
if we weren't just doing that all the time.
Yeah. Or how much life we can just soak up even.
Like, what are we missing? A client this morning told me that her parents were at like a baseball game and they were both on their phones and a line drive came right at them and hit the empty seat next to them, like where we are, Elizabeth. And they didn't even notice. They were like, looked up like, what happened? And I'm like, well, you could have died.
Wow.
But like we're so absorbed in what's going on our phone, we kind of forget to like notice what's around
This
us.
whole conversation is making me just want to put my phone in a lockbox for the next 6 weeks. I'm feeling anxiety about this conversation.
it is still useful.
It's making me feel like I want to check my phone and make sure I didn't miss anything while we were recording this.
I will say, because I'm intentional about sometimes leaving it and not bringing it with me, I actually feel the happiest those times.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm not unhappy other times, at least.
Right.
Like, I don't have a perception of being unhappy. I think I'm a generally happy person, but I feel there's something about not having it with me that actually makes me happier.
I completely vibe with that.
But I know other people, they will say it would make them more anxious. Like, I'm thinking of specific friends but what if my kids try to contact me?
Yeah.
Okay, I could be a little biased because I am an exposure therapist.
Mm-hmm.
But my guess is that anxiety would actually fade over time. the more you have the time away from your phone and the bad thing doesn't happen. And okay, yeah, bad thing could happen, but a broken clock is right twice a day too. So
Right.
it's not the phone.
I actually had something like this happen to me like years ago. I accidentally washed and dried my phone. And of course, it didn't work afterwards. And I was right near the end of my contract and I wanted to move to a different carrier. So I ordered one off Amazon and it took like a week to get here back then in olden times. And I didn't have a phone for a week and I felt like super liberated.
Yeah.
You know, and there was one time where I was stuck in a traffic jam, totally late to teach a class at the gym. And I was just kind of like,
This is
oh, well, I guess like they're going to have to figure it out.
Yeah, this is reminding me that something I forgot to mention earlier is there actually have been studies done and they found that decreasing social media use actually also decreased loneliness and increased overall well-being.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that you guys, both have had that like anecdotal experience of that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know I talked about making accessing social media more difficult. And Elizabeth, you're kind of already doing that with your phone. So like maybe even making your phone more difficult to access, practicing like having that awkwardness. And I think also making it a priority to really schedule in real life friend time with people or family time or
So important.
like experiencing the world and scheduling that, really making a priority to incorporate that in your life. And then I think finally something that is overall a helpful thing, but I think in particular when we're talking about like the comparisons, incorporating some kind of gratitude practice in your everyday life can be really, really helpful when it comes to that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Gratitude's super important.
It's surprising how helpful it can be. Yeah, so that's all I have.
And I'm thinking of that quote and remembered you're comparing yourself to someone else's highlight reel.
Yeah.
Not real life. Like,
Yes.
The more we can remember that, the better.
Yeah. You can notice that like, this is just one clip of someone's day that they may have posed, right? Like,
Yeah. That
Right.
really has no bearing on mine.
Right.
Right.
It doesn't
But
affect
it
me
feels
at all.
like it does.
Yes.
yeah, so I think taking a moment to experience the world, practice that gratitude can be really helpful.
I love it. What
Yeah.
a great conversation.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Wellness Rebranded. If you liked this episode, we would be super honored if you would leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps us get the word out to others about what we're doing here. So we would appreciate it.
Also, I think we all love reading the reviews, right?
Yeah,
It's
we
so
do.
nice to know
Yeah.
there's real people on the other end and that you're finding it helpful.
Yeah, and
Yes.
definitely if anyone has things that you want us to talk about, we would love to hear it. And we would love to
Address
answer
that.
any questions. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Wellness Rebranded. If you found this helpful, please take a moment and leave us a review and share it with your friends. If you'd like to learn more about Maura, you can find her website, mauratunney.com. To connect with Tara, find her on Instagram at Tara De Leon Fitness. To connect with me, Elizabeth, visit me at elizabethharrisnutrition.com. And while you're there, follow the link to join my Health and Healing with Intuitive Eating community on Facebook.